6 sinister autopsy cases of triplets revealed. Haunted medical mysteries exposed. In the quiet suburban sprawl, dark whispers seeped through the cracks of well-manicured lawns. "Did you hear?" someone would ask, glancing over their shoulder. "Another child is missing." Emily, a single mother juggling the duties of a diner waitress, felt the weight of those words twist in her gut. Her triplets, 3 innocent souls she had fought so hard to protect, were oblivious to the terror lurking outside their cozy home. But Emily knew. She could feel it in the air, thick with anxiety. Each night, as she wiped down the counter and served coffee to weary customers, her mind drifted home to the comforting chaos of toys strewn across the living room floor. Yet lately even that felt tainted. The diner buzzed with unease, and parents exchanged glances, sharing stories of the autopsy triad. A series of chilling folklore that spoke of triplets vanishing without a trace, claimed by a malevolent force. "Did you hear about the Johnsons?" a voice whispered at the end of the bar. "Triplets. All gone." Just like that. It was unthinkable. And yet, as Emily returned home from her exhausting shift, dread gnawed at her heart. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. All the toys in the living room were neatly arranged in a disturbing pattern, as if a puppet master had orchestrated them. Her breath caught in her throat. Rationality kicked in. They must have played a game. But, God, something felt horribly wrong. As she tiptoed through the shadowed halls, a muffled sound echoed. It was a low hum, a haunting melody that sent chills down her spine. Emily instinctively turned towards the children's room. Was someone in there? Her heart raced. She pushed the door open just an inch, the creak of the hinges deafening in the silence. Inside, their small forms were curled up, blissfully asleep. But they looked different. They were unnaturally still, faces serene, as if caught in a trance. Nothing prepared her for the realization of the connections binding their stories to the autopsy triad. Each family had experienced unfathomable loss. Their triplets snatched away, leaving nothing but a trail of horror. And the whispers about the abandoned hospital at the street's end, the strange noises, the flickering lights drew her like a magnet. There was a truth buried deep, one only she seemed desperate enough to unearth. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With resolve, Emily ventured outside. The night wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud, each shadow holding secrets. The glow of the hospital's windows flickered like a dying flame. She felt the pull of an unseen force driving her forward. As she entered the crumbling facility, dread washed over her. In the dim light, memories of lost children surrounded her, hushed laughter trapped in the echoes of the long-abandoned halls. There, hidden behind peeling walls, she stumbled into a room filled with torn toys, dusty photographs, and unsettling memories. Her heart thudded violently as she pieced together the dark history, a twisted tale that now ensnared her own children. As the weight of the truth pressed down, the question remained. Would she uncover the horrific veracity or safeguard her triplets from nightmares that might tear them apart forever? Reality shifted around her, and she understood that time was running out. The air inside the hospital was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Emily's breath quickened as she moved deeper into the wreckage. The distant echoes morphed into whispers, little voices taunting her, warning her to turn back. But she couldn't. Her triplets were at stake, and that thought ignited a fiery determination within her. Every creak of the floorboards reverberated through her, each sound amplified by her racing heart. She leaned against the cold wall, trying to regain composure but fighting against the oppressive weight of dread. Haphazard piles of old medical charts were scattered around her, some names striking like daggers. Families that had lost children, families just like hers. The discovery hit her like a punch to the gut. Could there be a link between the autopsy triad and what was happening to her triplets? A flickering overhead light momentarily illuminated a faded poster that read The Beyond. Understanding the mysteries, which felt more like a cruel joke given her current situation. She noticed a crumpled photo lying near the base of the wall. It was a picture of 3 smiling children. Emily quickly snatched it up, her fingers trembling. The faces were eerily familiar, strikingly similar to her own triplets. A chill ran down her spine as she turned the photo over, revealing scribbled names. Liam, Ethan, and Joy. The date was 3 years prior. Just as Emily processed this horrifying connection, the walls groaned, and a draft swept through, carrying faint echoes of laughter. She stood frozen. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a chaotic symphony of giggles and cries. This wasn't just a haunted place, it was a tomb for memories stolen from their rightful owners. No, I won't let this happen, she shouted into the darkness, her voice swallowed by the shadows. With renewed resolve, she pressed forward, desperate to piece together the truth. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on a half-open door at the far end. A sudden urge propelled her forward. It felt as if that door was calling her, urging her unravel the threads tying this mystery to her life. Each step echoed loudly in her ears, anxiety clawing at her resolve. Pushing the door wide open, she found herself in what seemed to be an old examination room. Dark stains marked the walls, pooling into shapes that felt sinister. An operating table sat in the center, cold, sterile, and haunting. It was here that nightmares became reality. Then her eyes caught something, objects strewn on the floor. Metal instruments glinted in the flickering light, including one that made her stomach churn, a scalpel. As she reached down for it, a shadow slipped past her. She spun around, heart pounding, only to be greeted by nothing but eerie silence. The feeling of being watched pressed down once more, like the hand of a ghost resting on her shoulder. She could almost hear the distant echoes of other mothers' cries, their stories blending into an unsettling chorus. They took our babies. Emily gripped the edge of the table, the cold metal biting into her palms, grounding her as fear threatened to swallow her whole. I will find them, she whispered, steeling her resolve. But did that assurance mean anything in a place where the darkness whispered back? The soft hum from earlier returned, serenading her with a malignancy that wrapped around her like chains. And then she noticed something terrifying. A small, blood-stained blanket draped over an empty chair. It bore a striking resemblance to her children's favorite, a bright blue with clouds, the one they carried everywhere. A scream clawed at her throat, but no sound emerged as she felt the chilling grip of panic. As she backed away slowly, the wall nearest to her began to pulse as if something behind it was alive. Suddenly, realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. The truth lay in this forgotten relic of horror. But as she turned to escape, a figure silently emerged from the shadows, its eyes glinting with malicious intent. Emily felt frozen, unable to scream or move. The figure stepped closer, and she understood she was not alone. What dark reality awaited her in the depths of this nightmarish place? Would her quest for her children lead to salvation, or were they already lost to a fate worse than death? The figure loomed over her, shrouded in the shadows, an embodiment of her worst fears. Emily's heart raced as she tried to discern its features, but all that met her gaze were 2 deep-set, smoldering eyes filled with a hunger that promised horror. She could feel the pulse of its presence like a living entity, thrumming in the darkness. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling despite her desperate attempt at bravery. The figure didn't reply. Instead, it stretched out an arm, filthy and skeletal, as if beckoning her to approach. A tingle of dread skittered down her spine. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but her body remained paralyzed. Sudden laughter echoed in the room, harsh and mocking, cutting through the silence. It slithered into her thoughts, intertwining with her memories. The laughter of children, her children. With an anguished gasp, she clutched the photo tighter, the faces of Liam, Ethan, and Joy blurring in her mind as the specter loomed into focus. "I'll take you," It whispered, voice thick with malice. To where the lost children wait. Emily's knees buckled as panic surged within her. This was no ordinary soul. This creature was a part of the darkness. A sickness that thrived in this suffocating labyrinth. With a rush of adrenaline, she broke free from her paralysis and sprinted toward the door, the echoes of her flight mingling with the creature's taunting laughter. Her footfalls pounded against the decrepit floor, but the shadows danced around her, choking the air, distorting her escape route. Every corner seemed to bend and twist, leading her deeper into the abyss. Breathing heavily, she skidded to a halt in another darkened hallway, its walls lined with rusted gurneys and forgotten tools of torment. She forced herself to look around. A faint glow flickered at the end of the corridor. Hope propelled her forward, a fleeting light in the suffocating darkness. But the whispers were relentless, weaving tales of despair into her mind. They wanted to play, they chanted. Join them, no. Emily shook her head violently, dispelling the thought. They were just words, echoes of lost lives that she had to ignore. She had to focus. Her triplets mattered more than these ghastly distractions. With every step, she felt hands grasping at her from the shadows, urging her to yield. Suddenly, the flickering light vanished, plunging her into pitch blackness. She fumbled, heart pounding, breath quickening. In the silence, she heard it again, a low, guttural sound creeping closer, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of dragging feet. She turned to run but collided with something solid. Panic surged as cold hands enveloped her arms, holding her back. Play with us, shrieked a chorus of childlike voices layered with madness. She could feel their breath, sweet yet rotting, mingling around her, wrapping her in claustrophobic dread. Emily thrashed, breaking free from the grip, collapsing to the floor. She scrabbled backward, her pulse racing as she sensed movement all around her. She had to escape. Closer and closer, the voices of the dead triplets surrounded her, urging her to join their eternal game. Just as she turned to run again, she caught a glimpse of a door at the far end of the hallway, her only escape. Summoning every ounce of strength, she dashed toward it. Shadowy figures loomed at the edges of her vision, and the air crackled with tension. Finally, she reached the door, throwing it open in a desperate bid for freedom. But what lay beyond was no sanctuary. Instead, Emily found herself in a sterile, unsettling room filled with glass-enclosed spaces and ghastly remnants of the past. As she stepped into this new, horrifying reality, a familiar voice echoed, sweet and innocent yet twisted through a veil of ghostly agony. Mommy. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. She took a trembling step forward, her heart racing as she realized the game was about to begin anew. In a world where dead children longed for life, did she have the will to fight? Or would she become the next name on the walls of this eternal nightmare? The air was thick in the room, laden with an oppressive cold that wrapped around Emily like a suffocating shroud. She stood frozen, her back against the door she had just slammed shut, eyes darting around the stark, clinical space. The soft glow of fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced mockingly against the stark white walls. Mommy. The voice was unnervingly sweet, dripping with a false innocence that turned her stomach. Liam? Ethan? Joy? Emily croaked, her voice hoarse and trembling. The names hung in the air, twisting the atmosphere like a noose. She took a cautious step forward, heart racing with equal parts dread and hope. Was it truly them? The room was lined with tall glass cases, each one like a coffin holding secrets better left buried. Shapes inside shimmered, hints of fabric and features distorted by the opaque material. A low hiss broke the silence, and her gaze snapped to the closest case. Something shifted inside. Mommy. The voice came again, laced with an edge of desperation that sent bile rising in her throat. It echoed around the chamber, an unholy choir of lost children, shrieking for release from their torment. As she moved closer to the glass case, Emily's breath caught. Inside, a figure, ghostly pale with familiar features, seemed to float just beneath the surface, the face of one of her triplets. It was distorted, eyes sunken and void of life, Yet the expression mirrored Joy's last lost smile, the one from the picture she carried. "Let me out," the figure whispered, its mouth moving soundlessly, desperately. The air around her thickened with the scent of decay. Panic flooded Emily's body. "No, I want to let you go," she screamed, backing away from the horrors that taunted her. She could feel the ground beneath her vibrating with laughter, ghoulish merriment rising and falling, wrapping around her like hands suffocating, pulling her toward the glass cases. Suddenly, the laughter turned into dissonant shrieks. It was all too much, the ghostly faces shifting in their permafrost prisons, the whispers of yearning children, the dread gnawing at her from within. She turned instinctively, searching for an exit, but every way felt blocked, every pathway twisted in impossible ways. "Mommy, save us," they cried, a cacophony spiraling towards madness. A horror beyond comprehension gnawed at her chest. She had to resist. She had to think clearly. Emily spotted another case at the far end of the room. Something moved inside that one too. Yet this figure looked different, more vibrant, as if it were alive, and that chilling feeling pulled her closer. Was it a trick or hope? "Mommy," it echoed, this time sounding more like a plea than a taunt. With trembling hands, she pressed her palms against the glass, staring into wide, familiar eyes that still held a spark of warmth. The face bore the telltale signs of childhood, the freckles, the familiar pout of lips. "Ethan." Her breath caught in her throat, confusion swirling in her mind. "Ethan, is it really you?" She pressed harder into the cold surface, heart thundering loudly enough to drown out the whispers. "Help me. They want to keep us here. You have to break the glass." His voice was a soft, pleading wail that pierced through the haze of her fear, cutting deep into her soul. But what if breaking the glass led to freedom or doom? "Mommy," the chorus was sinister now, the other triplets demanding attention, trying to pull her back into their game. It felt like dragging nails on a chalkboard, a gnawing sound that made her want to scream. A flicker of bright red caught her attention from the corner of the room. A metal sledgehammer, its surface gleaming defiantly in the dim light. Emily blinked and hesitated. The conflicting emotions raged inside her, her love for her children battling with the terror whispering doubts in her ear. Could one strike shatter their curse? Or would it unleash something even darker? She took a shuddering breath, the weight of the decision slamming down on her. There was no turning back. The sound of laughter swirled around her, like a storm about to break. As she grabbed the hammer, she whispered, "I will save you." But as she turned back to where her children waited, she realized shattered glass could open the door to freedom or unleash a new terror that would consume them all. Which would it be? Emily gripped the cold handle of the sledgehammer tightly, her knuckles turning white as she stared at Ethan's pleading face. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting disjointed shadows that morphed into impossible shapes, threatening to engulf her. The air was thick with an overwhelming dread, the laughter morphing into howls that clawed at her sanity. "Mommy," the voice was low and urgent now, wrapped in a fog of despair. Unable to hold back any longer, she swung the hammer. Its weight pulled her forward with a tree trunk force, crashing into the glass. The deafening sound echoed through the chamber, shattering the oppressive silence. A crack spiderwebbed instantly across the surface, and time slowed as she took in the moment a fragmented face surrounded by shards. "Ethan," she screamed, pain radiating through her chest. But a new, horrifying sound erupted as the glass splintered away. Instead of releasing him, a black, viscous sheet spilled from the broken case, writhing and twisting like serpents unleashed from a hellish pit. Emily staggered back, the sledgehammer slipping through her palms. "No, no!" The whispers escalated, filling the chamber with a terrifying symphony of madness. Ethan's face began to melt away, morphing into something grotesque, something hideous. All warmth vanished as the familiar freckles darkened and sunken eyes turned black with malice. "Mommy, you should have left us in there," the demonized figure hissed, the sweet innocence gone, replaced by something far more sinister. The voice grew thick with an unearthly echo, claws of delusion grasping at her mind. Desperate, She turned her attention to the other glass cases, now vibrating. The echoes of joy twisted into screams of agony. The faces inside her triplets twisted into nightmarish visages, mouths stretched into rictus grins. Emily held her head in her hands, feeling the madness clawing at her sanity. This wasn't freedom. It was a trap. Join us, they chorused, voices blending into a cacophony that throbbed against her skull. The sheer weight of their despair pushed against her, each pulse of agony pushing her closer to the walls. Get away. She hurled herself towards the hammer, but it felt unbearably distant. The laughter, that mocking laughter, gripped her around the waist, dragging her back toward the twisted horrors. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of a solitary glass case at the edge of the room, untouched, its surface clear and pristine, as if watching with a predatory glee. The figure inside had features obscured, a faint silhouette that thrummed with an energy that felt almost comforting in the storm of terror. Help me, the voice chimed, soft yet compelling. Emily's pulse quickened. Could this be another trick? She fought against the instinct to flee, battling the terror coursing through her as she lunged toward the unbroken case. As she pressed her palm against the glass, a surge of warmth flowed through her, igniting her spirit. The figure inside shimmered, features becoming distinct, now a face she didn't recognize but felt oddly drawn to. Was this another child? Another lost soul? Break this one, the pleading voice urged, and for an instant, hope flickered before her. Please help me. But the raucous laughter behind her threatened to drown out the plea, a taunting overture that promised doom if she made the wrong choice. Confusion surged through her, knotting her stomach with regret. What if this one led to ruin like the rest? She froze, the weight of choice crushing her. Mommy, the chorus of her triplets echoed, a siren-esque call threatening to pull her into the depths of despair. Every instinct screamed for her to step back, yet something deeper urged her forward. Would she do the unthinkable again? Would this glass break reveal salvation or a new horror, one that would steal away what little hope remained? In that moment, the laughter exploded, and the room trembled. Her heart raced. One decision could shatter everything, but shattering glass always left scars. What would she find inside? With shaky breath, she reached for the sledgehammer again, feeling the weight of despair pulsing in her veins. What if, and in that very instant, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering lights, plunging her into darkness. Emily, a voice whispered in the pitch black, chilling her to the bone. What now awaited her in the dark was a mystery she could never have prepared for. The darkness swallowed her whole, pressing against her skin like a heavy blanket. Emily felt the sledgehammer slip from her hand, its metallic clang swallowed by an abyssal silence. Shadows danced in the corners of her vision, each flicker sending a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. Emily, that voice again, so faint, so familiar, yet so utterly wrong. It slithered through her ears, curling around her thoughts like a serpent tightening its grip. Panicked breaths quickened in her chest, mingling with the biting cold that surged around her. Was it real, or was it just a figment of the growing madness? She couldn't tell. The air was thick with a rancid sweetness, like the smell of rot masquerading as something familiar. Mommy, the voice echoed again, now closer, dripping with an unsettling innocence that her mind railed against. She could sense the presence moving, drawn to her hesitation like a moth to flame. Leave me alone, Emily screamed, feeling her voice bounce off the unseen walls. Desperation clawed at her throat as she stumbled back, searching for the shattered remains of her mind, looking for clarity in chaos. Then, out of the barrel of darkness, a bright flash illuminated the room for a fraction of a second. What she saw made her recoil. Faces, twisted and contorted, surrounded her. The glass cases were there, now dimly glowing with the same sickly light. Inside each one, her triplets cried out, their mouths stretched wide yet silent, their eyes pleading through waves of despair. Help us, they whispered solidly, the terror in their expressions dawning on her like a slow-motion nightmare. But the other figure, no longer a soft silhouette, stood before the biggest case, shining with an otherworldly glow. The features were sharp now, sinister yet beckoning. The voice rose above the cacophony around her, impossibly soothing and vile at the same time. "Help me break this one." The urge to obey clawed at her insides as she stepped forward, heart racing. Could she trust this voice? Was this another trap? Every nerve screamed at her to turn back, but the longing for connection, for hope, pulled her relentlessly. "Choose," the figure commanded, and its presence pulsed through the air, suffocating and electrifying. She glanced between the ghoulish faces of her children and the gleaming figure, a decision that could seal their fate. A cacophony of cries erupted from her triplets, mixed with laughter that morphed into sobs. They clawed at the glass, desperate to escape their prison. The voices of despair from the surrounding cases tugged at her sanity, immersing her back in terror. With a determined breath, she reached for the hammer. The mere act sparked a storm inside her. She couldn't hold back any longer. Her instincts roared, commanding her to shatter the glass, to break free from this nightmare. But just as she lifted the sledgehammer, the room between them pulsated with a resonant energy, hum and thrum, as if the very walls were alive. The flickering lights returned, revealing the cavernous depths of the chamber filled with glass boxes, each filled with haunting sights that threatened to pull her under. "Mommy, we need you," the voices cried out, splitting the air with urgency that fed her terror. Emily hesitated, the gravity of choice weighing heavier than ever. Each second felt suspended in twisted anticipation. She had to decide. Would she free the one calling her, knowing fully well the cost it could bring? Or would she turn back, risk losing her children to the darkness that sought to consume them? Just then, a thunderous crash echoed from somewhere deep within the layers of shadows, rattling the glass cases. The room trembled violently, and a chilling sound, the unmistakable cackles of delight from whatever dark entity lurked nearby, grew louder. Emily, it cooed, honeyed and serpentine. Time's almost up. Could she save them all? Or was it already too late? As the walls echoed a fresh tide of laughter, her choice loomed like a nightmare in the dark, teetering on the brink of oblivion. What would her decision awaken? What truths would she shatter? The darkness pulsed, a living entity that pressed against Emily's skin. Her heart raced, thundering a frantic warning as the voices reached a fever pitch, a choir of despair clawing for her attention. With the hammer gripped tightly, she felt every ounce of uncertainty shifting like quicksand beneath her feet. "Emily, don't listen to it." The voices of her triplets melded into one desperate plea, echoing back to her like 1,000 shattered dreams. Each cry twisted her guts. They were so close yet so far, their desperate faces trapped in their glass prisons, reflecting a pure need for escape. But then the figure before the largest case breathed again, its voice sweetened like poison tinged with honey. "Break it. Free it. Don't let them suffer." With each word, Emily's resolve weakened. It was a spell, wrapped around her consciousness, drawing her further into its trap. She blinked, and for a heartbeat, she saw the figure as something else, a guardian, a savior. The hammer trembled in her grip, uncertainty fighting against the maternal instinct surging through her. The walls whispered figures from her past, dark reflections that clawed at her memories. Her mind swirled in horror, grappling with the truth of whatever this being was. Some horrors, once unleashed, could not be contained. "No," she hissed, forcing the words through grit teeth with all the conviction she could muster. Her feet rooted to the ground felt like lead. The laughter echoed louder, wrapping around her ankles like chains. "Mommy!" The urgent plea cut through the madness, a raw edge that ignited her spirit. The voices bled into a cacophony, rising and falling around her, a battle between the darkness and her love for her children. The figuresque glow flickered, momentarily casting the chamber in a cold light, illuminating grotesque faces screaming silently for release. It was as if the walls themselves were mocking her, leaning in with malicious glee as the sledgehammer vibrated, an extension of her frenzy. Just then, another crash vibrated through the chamber, louder this time, as if something monstrous lurked just beyond the veil. The air thickened with dread. "Make your choice, Emily," the figure coaxed with an alluring tone that clawed at her stomach like icy talons. With a primal scream, her decision clawed its way into her voice, yet all at once it slipped away. She stood frozen, caught in a whirlwind of chaos. Should she smash the glass, risking the wrath of the entity? Or deny the plea and fight whatever darkness sought to consume her? "Mommy," the voices trembled, sinking into a haunting wail as Emily's resolve wavered. The laughter morphed into something more sinister, twisting into a deep growl that reverberated through the room. With a brutal clarity, she understood the stakes, a blinding flash of realization. This was not just about saving her children. It was about facing the torment of her own past. She had to confront what lay buried beneath the surface. The figure coiled closer, its features sharpening in the flickering light, anticipation glimmering in its hollow eyes. "One last time, Emily. Choose wisely." Then, without warning, the lights overhead exploded in a spark of brilliant fire, enveloping the chamber in restored darkness. Lost in the chaos, Emily's heart hammered as she felt the cold tentacles of fear envelop her limbs. A grating sound echoed through the void, a scraping along the walls like something awakening. "You've broken the barriers, and now the truth shall rise." Her breath caught in her throat. A bottomless dread spiraled out of control. The voices spun around her, thickening and deepening into a black mist. Could she still break free? What curse awaited her if she let herself shatter the glass? And just as she was ready to act, a new pulse of reality struck her, a distant calling, the faintest whisper from somewhere further still, beckoning her with a promise of answers, buried in shadows deeper than the void that surrounded her. "Come find me." Emily, who was calling? And if she followed, what would she unravel? The darkness thickened, wrapping around Emily like a suffocating blanket. The shadows crept closer, drawn to her distress, as the voices twisted into a chaotic symphony of yearning and desperation. "Emily, Emily, come find me." The seductive call echoed in her mind, stirring something deep within, a thread of memory, a glimmer of recognition that she couldn't grasp. Her heart pounded like a war drum as she stood frozen, the cold steel of the hammer heavy in her trembling hands. She could feel the entity, its presence swelling, feeding off her fear and indecision. The glass case ahead loomed, ethereal and ominous, a silent testament to her children's plight. With every breath, she could taste the bitter tang of hopelessness in the air. Then, a snap, a raw sound that cut through the fog. Something was breaking free. The distant scraping grew sharper, more frantic, reverberating with a promise she couldn't fathom. "It's coming," she whispered, a knot of terror tightening in her chest. Suddenly, the figure emerged from the shroud of darkness, its features clearer now. A gaunt visage, eyes glowing with an eerie light, impossibly wide. "Make your choice, Emily," it crooned sweetly, every syllable drenched in malice. "Release them or face the consequences." Her breath hitched as she caught a glimpse of her children within the glass, faces pale, eyes pleading. "Mommy," they whispered again, their voices wrapping around her heart like a vice. "Leave them alone," Emily screamed. The words felt weak, hollow against the malevolence that coiled around the room. But inside, a spark ignited. They needed her. She needed to fight back, to remember who she was before this nightmare enveloped her. A rumble echoed, a snarling sound building in the shadows, and Emily, fueled by both anguish and rage, took a step closer to the case. The sledgehammer, gripped tightly in her hand, trembled against the surge of fear. "I will not let you win," she challenged, her voice breaking, each word a desperate promise to her children. The figure recoiled slightly, surprised by her sudden determination. "You think you can defy me? I am the darkness you fear." Emily would not falter. The voices of her children resonated louder, drowning the echoing growls of the figure. "Mommy," they called, more frantic now, a sound that ignited raw fury within her. With a sudden burst of clarity, she realized that the answer lay not in destroying, but in understanding. She raised the hammer higher, not to strike but to reclaim power over her fears. "I won't let you have them. I will bring you into the light." The air shimmered as she slammed the hammer down, not shattering glass, but striking at the heart of the darkness itself. Light bloomed in blinding rays, illuminating the chamber into surreal clarity. The figure screeched a hideous, guttural sound as tendrils of shadow recoiled. But then, something shifted. A chilling laughter danced through the air, echoing from the depths of the cavern. "You think you can escape me, Emily? The past cannot be undone. It haunts, it festers." The light faltered as cracks began to form, fissures snaking along the walls, splintering the illusion of safety she decreated. The rooms around her bobbed and swayed, dark and light clashing in a frenetic storm that threatened to pull her under. Through it all, the haunting whisper called again with urgency, more insistent. "Come find me, Emily." It lured her deeper into the chaos, promising answers hidden away, half-formed memories clawing their way back to the surface. But fear struck anew, sharp and clear. What if she followed? What if she found only despair? As the figure morphed back into the shadows, a visceral decision churned in her gut, propelling her forward. She stepped onto the precipice of newfound darkness, driven by a desperate wish for truth. "I'll know the answer," she shouted defiantly into the void. But just before she plunged into the depths, a dreadful realization shattered her defiance. "The choice isn't mine, is it?" The echo of the entity reverberated behind her, as shadows thickened and the laughter became more twisted. "Soon you will understand with that." The lights flickered again, plunging everything back into raw, agonizing darkness. The silence that followed bore no relief, only the heavy promise of greater horrors to come. "What have you unleashed, Emily?" A voice hissed from the black, and as the oppressive dread settled once more, Emily trembled, knowing she had crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Would she uncover the truth before it consumed her? Or would she become a fading memory, lost forever in the abyss? The silence thrummed like a taut string ready to snap. Emily's heart thudded in her chest, urging her to move, but the darkness clung to her like a parasite. It seeped into her skin, heavy and sticky, suffocating every rational thought left in her mind. "What have I done?" she murmured, the weight of her actions anchoring her to the spot. Suddenly, the air around her stirred, chilled and caressing, but infused with otherworldly tension. The earlier cacophony of whispers was replaced by a singular voice, low and conspiratorial. "Are you ready to meet the truth, Emily?" It slithered over her, and she recoiled instinctively. "Well, are you?" it demanded, more insistently now, as shadows danced at the corners of her vision. I can't do this." Panic threatened to spill over. What would she discover if she followed the lure of the voice? Was it safe to know? The choice churned uncomfortably, and deep down, she feared the answer could unravel her completely. Just beyond the veil of darkness, faint flickering lights began to emerge like stars in the night, each pulse promising clarity, yet she was wary. Shadows twisted and morphed, forming shapes that danced mockingly before her eyes. Were they her children? The thought of them, their innocent faces caught in the throes of terror, made her throat tighten. She couldn't abandon them, not now, not ever. With each step forward, she heard the soft echo of rhythmic breathing, echoing faintly. Felt familiar. Was it them? "Mommy!" Their innocent calls clawed at her heart, urging her to move. She balled her fists, hot tears blurring her vision. "Help me!" Her voice wavered, but it held a fierce determination. The deeper she ventured, the more palpable the darkness became, a thickening fog of dread gathering around her. "Find us." The voice sang again, and with it came a rush of wind that swept her hair back and pulled her deeper into the haunting chamber. Shadows beckoned, swirling around her, presenting fractured images of past moments with her children. Their laughter, their cries, their love, all intertwined with flashes of a gruesome madness tied to the entity. Then, in a heartbeat, the shifting shadows slipped away, revealing an old, cracked mirror hanging from a decaying wall. Emily hesitated, the reflection not showing her face but instead projecting endless scenes of despair intertwined with the faces of her children. Her heart dropped, Do it. Look closer. The voice slithered again, entwining with the vision before her. Instinctively, she stepped forward, arms trembling, unable to resist. What truth lay within her fractured reality? What secrets did this cursed mirror conceal? Don't be afraid, it whispered, the echo full of taunting malice. Emily's breath quickened. She had to confront this, but what if it shattered her? What if the truth was worse than any darkness she could conjure? Suddenly, shadows collided, coiling around her like serpents, and in the madness, she heard them again, clearer this time. Mommy, we're here. The words twisted through her, igniting a fierce need to save them. She thrust her hands out, desperate to break the connection between the darkness and the mirror. I'm coming for you. The tendrils tightened. But then the laughter erupted again, a monstrous sound that shook her to the core. You can't save what you can't control, Emily. You've awakened something ancient and from which there is no return. As the shadows reached, she glanced back at the mirror, where a hint of her own reflection battled against a deluge of agony and chaos. This was no simple answer. This was a terrible awakening. Fight it, Emily, she whispered to herself, the urgency igniting hidden strength, an ember of hope in the consuming darkness. And as she prepared to face whatever twisted truth lay within, the walls shuddered violently, cracking even further. Would she find the courage to confront her fears? Or would the darkness swallow her whole, forever binding her to its horrifying legacy? With a final roar of shadows closing in, she knew that somehow the real test was just beginning. The claws of terror gripped tighter, and her heart raced with fear and the promise of revelations lurking just beyond reach. What will you choose next, Emily? Whispered the sinister voice, leaving her gasping for what little hope remained. Emily stood on the precipice of the unknown, her heart racing like a runaway train. The room swirled with shadows, taunting her with memories and regrets, daring her to step forward. The voices of her triplets called out, a desperate chorus that echoed through the chamber. Mommy, we're waiting. The darkness pressed against her, heavy and suffocating, wrapping around her like a second skin. But something flickered within, a spark of determination igniting a fire in her chest. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions. Her children were relying on her, and she would fight whatever dark force held them captive. Show me the truth, she yelled, her voice cutting through the terrifying haze. The shadows seemed to waver at her challenge, almost as if they were listening, their writhing forms coiling tighter, pulsating with a life of their own. The air crackled with anticipation, and for a brief moment, a silence fell, so palpable it made her shiver. The mirror's surface rippled, distorting her reflection until it shimmered with clarity. Her eyes widened as images flooded the glass. Chaotic scenes of joy and innocence intertwined with horrors she had never dreamed possible. Each image felt like a piece of her soul, her triplets laughing, playing, then swapping to scenes of loss, their faces twisted in fear and despair. Memories crashed over her like waves, threatening to pull her under. Look closer, the sinister voice echoed. What do you see? Emily forced herself to step forward, feeling the cold surface of the mirror beneath her palms. I see my children. I see love, she shouted defiantly, willing her heart to break free from the shackles of despair. With a sudden rush, the mirror exploded, fracturing into 1,000 shards that caught the pale light. Each fragment reflected not only her triplets but also the shadows, the entity that had tormented them. It was not just darkness. It was her fear embodied. The weight of her past choices pressed down harder, each piece of glass showing a different outcome, a different path she could have taken. Enough, she screamed, experience coiling through her lungs as the realization struck her. She had the power to change this narrative. You will not take my children from me. The moment rippled outward, colliding with the shadows and throwing them into disarray. The darkness shrieked, a visceral sound that reverberated in her bones, writhing and twisting as it struggled against her resolve. Mommy, came the clear, innocent voice, drawing her attention. She turned, catching sight of a new figure stepping from the furthest corner of the room. It was small, radiant, and unmistakably familiar. It was Joy, one of her triplets, standing with an ethereal glow, glowing with warmth that surged through the oppressive atmosphere. "Joy," Emily breathed, her heart swelling. "You're here. I'm not lost, Mommy," Joy said, her voice echoing like a song of hope. "You need to let go of your fear. Only then can we break away." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she took a shaky step forward, reaching towards her daughter. "I won't leave you, I promise." "Fight it," Joy urged, the darkness drawing close. "Face it together." Emily shifted her focus back to the darkness, feeling the weight of its malevolence trying to suffocate her hope. "You do not own me," she cried, raising her hands defiantly. The shadows' laughter morphed into violent shrieks. They surged, rushing at her with a force that threatened to obliterate everything she stood for. But Emily felt the warmth of Joy beside her, anchoring her spirit, allowing her the strength to stand firm. With every ounce of her will, Emily shouted, "I am more than you. You are a reflection of my fears and doubts. You cannot hold us." The chamber erupted in a blinding light as the shadows convulsed in shock, shrieking in agony. The brilliance shot through Emily, filling her with unyielding strength, dispelling the dark forces that had haunted her for so long. The feeling was intoxicating and liberating. A wave of empowerment surged through her veins, igniting a spark to fight back. In that moment, she knew this was not just a battle for her children but a fight for herself. Slowly, she reached out toward the shadows, the glow of her love piercing through the chaos. She felt the darkness begin to dissolve, an intricately woven tapestry tearing apart at the seams. "Leave my children," she yelled, her voice rising above the din. "We choose life, we choose freedom," the shadows wailed, their grotesque whispers morphing into desperate cries as they began to flake away into nothing, just wisps fading into the ether. One by one, the glass cases shattered, revealing her triplets inside, their faces lit with relief and joy. "Mommy!" Liam exclaimed, bursting free from his enclosure. Closely followed by Ethan and Joy, they rushed into her arms, wrapping around her, their love instantly binding the family together again. Emily wept tears of both joy and release, feeling the weight of her fears vanish as she cradled her children close. The room pulsed with a warm glow, the oppressive chill dissipating like morning mist. "We're safe," Joy whispered, her tiny hand gripping Emily's. "You saved us." "Yes," Liam chimed, his voice bright and full of innocence. "We're home now." The shadows fled back into nothingness, leaving behind only echoes of despair. Emily held her children tightly, feeling their warmth and love envelop her like a protective cocoon. The past had tried to devour them, but together, they emerged victorious. As the darkness dissolved entirely, Emily knew she would never forget the lessons learned nor the pain endured. But now, free from the stranglehold of fear, she felt the promise of new beginnings pulsate around them. "Let us go home," she said softly, her voice steady and full of warmth, her heart beating stronger than ever. With her triplets by her side, together, they stepped into the light, leaving the horrors of the past behind them, ready to embrace whatever came next. They walked away, hand in hand, into a world where love triumphed over despair. And as they ventured forth, a sense of peace settled over them. The darkness would not claim their future. They would always walk with light. Don't wait even one more second to share this with your friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. If you enjoyed this story, you need to subscribe now so you won't miss our next gripping adventure. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. This is the moment to show your support.